Hey, what's going on, everyone? I apologize for starting late. The way this works is I had a bunch of things written down here in my University of Colorado. I'm sorry, my Colorado University notebook here of things. I had things written down that I wanted to do today, and I was out later. I was out much later last night than I hoped to be. Shout out to my little sis. And when you go to bed late, you get up late, and then everything happens later than intended. All right, let me see, make sure everything's working here. Let's see. Thank you to whoever gave me that like. Please smash that like button no matter how long you stay. Please consider subscribing to the channel if you are not subscribed. Hey, happy 2025. This is the first science live stream of 2025. I think I'm going to use the Dr. Thunder model today. For those of you who know who Dr. Thunder is, that he part of his model, a major part of his model is looking at footage and then giving reaction to footage. I think another gentleman named Passport OG does that in a very, very masterful way. So as opposed to reading to you all and just talking and filibustering, we're going to look at some video today regarding the LA wildfires. I was on vacation for a little while, spanning from just before Christmas to after the new year, and I was actually out west as all of this was unfolding. And I wanted to live stream, but I was on vacation, and I had to tell myself, you're on vacation, just relax. And then when I got back earlier this week, I wanted to talk about this, but you have to kind of get back, you have to shake off the rust and get back into the mood of live streaming. So here we are. So let me make a quick announcement over on my original channel, then we'll jump in. I'm planning on going for about an hour. Going to the gym is also on my to-do list for today. Let me know who's here. Let me know if you have reaction to anything that I say or any of this. Let me know. All right. Share this over on my main antenna, and then I will get started. Okay. And again, whoever is watching, you can let me know who you are and what you think about any of this. And let me see. Let me share it, create a post, and very simply, I'm live. For about an hour, because I want to finish up go to the gym, get back and watch some of the football, and then perhaps go to another gathering later on tonight. Okay, so I'm live over there. So Tony, thank you for being here. Michael, thank you for being here as well. He says, good morning, Doc. Thank you for being here. Happy New Year once again to everyone. This is the first science live stream for 2025. All right, so with that, I'm going to play this intro. I am going to update this intro. I promise, as a YouTube content creator, as time goes on, you want to make updates to your channel. I did add one thing back there with my DNA strand. There's the Iron Man Mark I suit in his box there, and in his little his crouch, his pose. I was at Ollie's with my mother over the holiday season, and that Iron Man, he was on clearance. For those of you who don't know, you get discount stuff at Ollie's like toys, and I fell in love with that Iron Man, and I had to get him and use him as a background piece for my content. So I'll see you on the other side. This once again is the Cheryl Pons intro, and then I will jump in and we're going to talk about wildfires and politics and what happens when politics and science mix and things go wrong.
So Anwar, I see you have the periodic tables on your chest.
Mm-hmm.
So what's that all about? Why are you walking around with a chemistry chart on your chest?
Well, Cheryl, so this channel is a STEM channel. So when I was conceiving of it and figuring out how to grow it, I figured I should have some t-shirts to go with it. So the periodic table is critical to most of the scientific fields.
Welcome to Big Discussions 76, Science and Technology. Science and technology are all around us all of the time, and there are always science and technology stories to tell. There are always science and technology stories to tell. Welcome back to Big Discussions 76, Science and Technology, everyone. My name is Dr. Anwar Yusuf Dunbar. I think most of you know who I am, but for those of you who don't know, that's who I am. So today we're going to talk about the LA wildfires when mixing politics and science goes bad. Before I hop in, a quick advertisement. This is my book project, The Engineers of Western New York Basketball Story, Part 1, Innocent Basketball Dreams. This little subtitle here says, a basketball story about what sports teach us about competing, succeeding, and persevering in the world. In addition to being about the great game of basketball, this is also a coming of age story. It's also a manhood journey. A lot of us at least in my subscriber base, we have an interest in seeing Black boys and men thrive. And there are consequences for when there aren't male figures around for when you set off in your life. When you set off in your life and on your journey and there aren't any male figures around, you have to figure out quite a few things on your own. And there are going to be trial and error. There's going to be lots of trial and error. There are going to be mistakes made. There are going to be a lot of things that you're going to experience, and things you're going to have to overcome when there aren't male figures around. Because as I was discussing with a friend earlier this week, I think manhood and masculinity, those are a lot of aspects of those are taught. Some of it's innate, some of it is biological, but some of it is taught. And last year, or maybe the year before, I did do something on the male elephant experiment in Africa, where the young male elephants were running wild on the preserve. But it wasn't until they put a grown bull male elephant in that preserve that those younger male elephants started behaving. And it took a male presence there to bring them under control. So my book is in large part about male figures and what happens when they're there, and then what happens when they're not there. So consider this is available on Amazon. I will be selling signed copies on my website as well shortly, but please consider buying a copy on Amazon. You can get the ebook, the hardcover, and the paperback edition. And I was working on this earlier today, just checking the fonts. When you're a scientist like me, you're a stickler for details, and you want to make sure everything is perfect. And when you write a book, it's actually a living document, and it's almost never done. Anyway, that was on my to-do list. Also updating my Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Piece. Another quick advertisement here. I updated this post. As a writer, you're always supposed to be updating your work. Shout out to Malcolm Gladwell. For anyone who was into Dr. King Day, was actually on Wednesday. It's actually the 15th. His birthday was actually on the 15th. His birthday is the 15th. We celebrated on the 20th, but his birthday is actually on the 15th. And I just updated this post here. And this talks about what Dr. King saw and what he was thinking about in his last days when he was assassinated. So this kind of wraps Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Dr. Claude Anderson together, because Dr. King was thinking about, he was thinking about the fact that he might have integrated his people into a burning house, but Dr. King was also thinking about economics. And, he did say, we're coming to Washington, D.C. to get our check. So this talks about what he was thinking about when he got assassinated, why he got assassinated, and the importance of economic empowerment, which is what he was thinking about when he died, right before he got assassinated. And it's what Dr. Claude Anderson has been really talking about and pounding his drum about over the last 40 years, though he's been kept quiet in terms of media coverage. So Tony, that link is there if you want to read that. That is not below this stream. Okay, so we're going to talk about the wildfires. I do want to make these interesting, so we're going to start off with something fun, and then we're going to jump in, watch a few clips, and then I'll wrap it up. Okay, so dogs, I saw this clip on X last night. I'm not going to play the sound. This is really quick, but I want to make these a little more fun, and I want to add in some interesting science facts and factoids. So I saw this clip. It's a little bit heartwarming. Dogs are a major part of a lot of people's lives. I am not a dog owner. I have a friend who is, and I didn't really have an appreciation for dogs until I met this friend. But this is a clip. It's a short clip. It says, in Istanbul, so this was in Turkey, a mother dog brought her puppy whose heart had stopped due to the cold to the veterinarian. Okay, so I'm not going to play this with sound because I don't want a copyright strike, but you could see a mother dog here bringing her puppy to the veterinarian to help get it back to life and back healthy. So she brings the puppy to the veterinarian. The veterinarian is right there examining the puppy. He brings the puppy into the room there. She's lingering around, and as you can see, she's right there at the table. This is very heartwarming and touching, and this is very heartwarming and touching, and the puppy's being nursed back to health. They're treating it. They're treating it, and then the little guy is back to life and alive and thriving there. So I wanted to show this, and there she is caring for it, and there we are. So I thought this was a touching video, and it shows the love of a mother dog, and it shows dogs are smart. Dogs are very dynamic creatures, and I just wanted to show that. So let's move on. So the news recently, in addition to Washington, D.C. is going to turn orange again on Monday, the recent news has been about the California wildfires. So the wildfires broke out in California, and a lot of neighborhoods, a lot of homes have been eviscerated and destroyed by fires. So I have 3 video clips here I'm going to show. The third one is the longest. I might not play the entire thing, but I'm going to start this off by saying, from a scientific perspective, basically what you're looking at here when you're thinking about the California wildfires, where we're thinking about politics, we're thinking about Mother Nature, we're thinking about the environment. And so a bunch of different things are being rolled together here. So the big thing policy-wise, California, the lawmakers and the politicians out there are very environmentally liberal, and there's a lot of environmental activism out there in California. And so from what I've been learning, they've made several decisions about the environment and about, in this case, water, for the preservation of certain aquatic species. And that has impacted the amount of water available to the citizenry and the people. And it's even caused shortages in the amount of water available for things like putting out forest fires. Okay, so there was a water shortage. But also, as I'll show, they haven't been very proactive in cleaning out the underbrush. So you have all these forests and you have all of this kindling and underbrush there. And if you don't clean that stuff out, and if you don't cleanse your forest of those things, you're creating a lot of kindling and a lot of fuel for massive forest fires. Okay, so there have been a lot of, part of what's happening is you're looking at a clash in the political sector regarding what the California politicians should have done, what they haven't done, and how the chickens have come home to a roost for not only the California government, but also for the residents there in California. Most Vet says, hit the like button, peace and all. What's up, Doc? Looks like a good discussion in the brew. Thank you for being here, Most Vet. Okay, so the first video I'm going to show you guys is from Bill O'Reilly. Okay, and that might trigger some of you guys. I know that my brother, shout out to my brother, he's going to come up later on in the stream. My brother can't stand Bill O'Reilly from years ago. I happen to enjoy Bill O'Reilly's ranting and his content and his reporting. But this first video is going to be a short snippet of one of his discussions regarding the forest fires. Okay, so I'll start this one here, and you guys let me know what you think there in the chat. Please smash the like button. If anyone wants to make a donation to the channel, my Cash App and PayPal are here. And let's go. This gets to the politics of what happened and what the California politicians did not do to help prevent this thing that's unfolding right now. Fair use, fair use.
A number of programs that would help with water supply in the Golden State. That is a fact. Now, Congress never allotted the money to do it, but Trump didn't get the legislation he needed to bring water relief to California. Why didn't he get it?
So this is getting to apparently when President Trump was president before, they were looking into this and they were making recommendations to California, and they were this was being discussed years ago before this happened.
Because the California legislature in Sacramento, this is Newsom, okay, objected to a number of things. All right. So they objected to diverting water from the state's rivers into water storage facilities. So the Tuolumne River is huge. I rafted it. It's the toughest raft in the country. All right. But the legislature said, no, you can't take any water from the rivers. Can't do that. Okay. Then the legislature said, well, you can't divert any kind of moisture, snow melt or rain or anything like that, because it might impact the fish. This is the environmental lobby. And this is what they did.
So there were policies put in place by the environmental lobby, the environmentalists that prevented diverting water sources or using water sources from the mountains and from the environment to water storage. And in the fires, one of the things we saw was that there was a shortage for the firefighters. There was a shortage in terms of using water to extinguish the fires.
It's on the record. So Congress basically said, look, we're not going to get involved with this unless you can get it under control in California. That's what Congress said. So Trump didn't get the legislation, although, okay, he had agreement that if the California people would just get out of the way, the federal government would fund. Roll the tape.
I got all of the approvals, and he said, I don't want to sign it. I don't want the water. We don't need the water. I said, you need the water. Your reservoirs are empty, the whole place. You need the water. That was 5 years ago. And I had it all done. The work was all done. We sent it to him. He refused to sign it.
It's true.
Your reservoirs are bare. I had it all done. He refused to sign it. He didn't want whatever help we were going to give him. So this was 5 years ago. So a part of what's happening is part of this is being politicized, but apparently a lot of this preparations could have been made for this years ago. So that's part of what people are looking at and really, really wrangling about. Why wasn't something done about this years ago? Please smash the like button for this stream if you have not. Please consider subscribing if you are not subscribed. I just wanted to play a snippet of that. That video is below in the description box. Please smash the like button. And whoever lives in California, I hope you all are okay out there, you and your families. Okay, I'm going to play something else. I mentioned my brother Amal earlier, who is a very, very industrious and curious individual, just like me. And he shared this, and I thought this was interesting. This very much fits with the mission of this channel. Apparently, there are devices that can extinguish fires without water, or at least without directly using water. So this is entitled Pump Up the Base to Douse a Blaze, Mason Students Invention Fights Fires. So this gets more into innovation and technology, right? And apparently these guys created a device years ago that could put out fires. So then the question is, with more of these devices, would you need the reservoirs filled? Would you need that? All right. Fair use.
We're both graduating from the Electrical and Computer Engineering Department at George Mason University this coming May. We're here. We're just going to test out our device that we use that uses sound frequencies to extinguish flames.
I see this device being applied to a lot of things. First off, I think in the kitchen, it could be on top of a stovetop. But eventually, I'd like to see this applied to maybe swarm robotics, where it'd be attached to a drone, and that would be applied to forest fires or even building fires, where you wouldn't want to sacrifice human life.
Professor Brian Mark really stepped in to help us.
Just gave us a lot of support.
I think as a whole, engineering is really just finding solutions finding simple solutions to complicated problems. Engineering is all about finding a way to make the impossible possible. So that's what we did.
So they developed a device that could extinguish fires. I don't know if water was used in that device. I'm going to play that one more time. This is very, very short. But what I want you to also understand, guys, is this was uploaded 9 years ago.
We're both graduating from the Electrical and Computer Engineering Department at George Mason University this coming May. We're here. We're just going to test out our device that we use that uses sound frequencies to extinguish flames.
I see this device being applied to a lot of things. First off, I think in the kitchen, it could be on top of a stovetop. But eventually, I'd like to see this applied to maybe swarm robotics, where it'd be attached to a drone, and that would be applied to forest fires or even building fires, where you wouldn't want to sacrifice human life.
Professor Brian Mark really stepped in to help us.
Just gave us a lot of support.
I think as a whole, engineering is really just finding solutions finding simple solutions to complicated problems. Engineering is all about finding a way to make the impossible possible. So that's what we did.
Tony says, so it uses sound waves to change the air pressure. You know what, Tony? I'm not exactly sure how this works. I think that's probably part of it. But I think it's interesting that they didn't have a device. Their device isn't shooting water out. I told my brother, I said, there must be something about that device that, because you're getting into physics as well, there must be something that's scrubbing up all the oxygen out of that vicinity, because fires need oxygen, and they need carbon and they need oxygen. So I think, but I think the other thing is that video was uploaded 9 years ago. So this technology is out there. Okay, the technology to extinguish fires, perhaps in ways independent of water, though that exists. It's out there. That was 9 years ago. But I don't know why it hasn't been implemented in a large scale, but it hasn't been implemented in a large scale. So that's just a sample of what's out there. All right. So the last video, Money Motion, thank you for stopping through. I appreciate that. Everybody, please smash that like button. The likes are free. The likes are free. All right. This last video, we're going to watch some of it. I'm at a half hour. I don't want to go too long today, but this is one I just saw. I mean, there are so many videos out now about this, talking about the politics of it and talking about a little bit of the science of what happened. But as I was getting ready for the stream, there was we're gonna give Neil deGrasse Tyson his flowers a little bit in this one. This is from his Star Talk channel. He's the host for this. You guys know that I was a little bit critical of Neil and his stances on gender and certain people participating in women's sports who biologically shouldn't be participating in women's sports. I was critical of him and his support for that. But I think when Neil is in his lane of physics and astronomy, I think he's a home run hitter. So he has a guest on. We're going to watch a little bit of this. It's 25 minutes. We're not going to watch the whole thing. But then we're going to, then I'll wrap up. You guys keep letting me know what you think there in the chat. Michael says at Tony, yep. Okay. So I think there's consensus in the chat about how that device works. So Michael also believes that sound waves are being used to extinguish those fires. All right. So this is entitled, Why Are the LA Wildfires So Extreme? Again, this is a Neil deGrasse Tyson production. So this gets to what caused these wildfires and what can be done in the future to minimize this. Money Motion says, Michael says, directed sound wave pressure. Money Motion says, I'm just thinking about the feasibility tests on a large scale. Do you think that a bureaucrat would stop the pilot programs just because, quote unquote, insert random reason? Yeah. And then the other thing is, do you want sound waves that large shooting at such a wide space? I'm sure there are probably, quote unquote, environmental environmental considerations as well. Though, if everything's burning down, maybe that's the biggest environmental consideration. All right. So let's say you, Neil deGrasse Tyson, you guys keep letting me know what you think there in the chat. Fair use. Fair use. We're going to watch a little bit of this. I will stop it throughout. I'll let this go for about 15 to 20 minutes before I wrap up. But this link is below in the description box as well. Fair use.
Today is actually a really exciting day because we got to unfold one of these units. Large donors around the
Do we know how these fires started?
In these sorts of fires, there really aren't any natural ignition sources in a county with millions of people living in it. They're just the fact of modern life. For folks who've never experienced a wind-driven wildfire up close and personal, I think it's difficult sometimes to get a sense of scale regarding the real enormity. Imagine if you were in a blizzard, except that instead of snowflakes, all of them were embers. And instead of 40-mile-an-hour winds, it was, in some cases, 100 miles an hour. Okay. And that's what you're up against.
The underbrush is what will carry the fire from one home to another.
Billions of hot embers raining down.
So you guys noticed that, again, he mentioned the underbrush. So particulate, biomass, if you don't, as he'll describe, if you don't clean that stuff up, you've just got fuel waiting around to ignite everything flammable in the area.
This is Star Talk, Explainer Edition. And I've got with me Daniel Swain. Take us to this season right now in California, or West Coast more broadly. Isn't January the rainy season in Southern California?
Well, typically, yes.
I wanted to say one other thing before he starts that answer. I think this whole thing, it gets to the importance of having an educated electorate. Okay, so the politicians, they're gonna say things, they're gonna lobby for things, they're gonna play upon our emotions, they're gonna hit us with propaganda. But the electorate, the citizenry, needs to be educated on things so they know what's a good idea, what's a bad idea, what's going to work, what's not going to work, what's going to cause problems down the road, and not just get caught up in propaganda and political speak and tribalism, identity politics. The citizenry needs to be educated on what they're voting for and who they're voting into office. Fair use. So what they just described, no sound? Oh, guys, I'm so sorry. I didn't share the screen with you guys. Money motion, thank you. Duh. So let's go back. Let's go back. I'm so sorry. I think I left off here. Thank you, Money Motion.
Take us to this season right now in California, or West Coast more broadly. Isn't January the rainy season in Southern California?
Well, typically, yes. January would be pretty close to the middle of the rainy season in California generally, and specifically in Southern California, where the fires are currently burning. So far this season, about the southern third of the state of California, so including all of LA County, the whole LA basin, San Diego, Santa Barbara, pretty much hasn't rained at all. We're having this conversation in mid-January. That is now the driest start to this season. And by the season in California, we talk about the water year, which usually starts October 1st and runs through the end of the winter rainy season. It's been bone dry. It's a no-show this far in the south, though remarkably, that is not true in Northern California, where some places have seen one of their wettest starts to the rainy season on record. So we have in California this year so far what I call a precipitation dipole.
That's very
So a precipitation dipole. You guys were able to see that, right? Okay. So Southern California has been dry, and from what he said, it's flipped. So Northern California has gotten lots of rain. Okay, Northern California has gotten lots of rain. So then, as a scientist, I'm wondering, with that rain dipole, whatever he called it. One question is that man-made or is that nature? We know that, I think I did a stream or a video over a year ago about the Earth's, we know that the Earth's magnetic poles have shifted. Okay, so the Earth is doing things on its own. Okay, and the Earth has been here for millions of years, and even before the combustion engine. And even before the automobile and the jet plane and the diesel engine. So the Earth is doing things on its own. That's my biggest takeaway from what he just discussed there. Okay, it just so happens that that Southern California is drier now. Now, the other thing is water management is critical. The availability of water for all those western states, Colorado, Utah, Arizona, California, the availability of water is a big issue. That's the other part of why that's important. Okay, let me go back. Money Emotion says, I would think clearing underbrush that clearing underbrush is a function of public works would be at the top of the list in dry wooded areas. Yeah, but that goes back to the politicians. If they're not prioritizing that, if they're not setting money aside for that, then it's not going to get done. Okay. So Governor Gavin Newsom is falling under a lot of criticism right now. Fair use.
Explain to me the thermodynamics of what happens if it hasn't rained. What's the actual driving mechanism here?
Right. Well, this is where we're getting into the nitty gritty and the tricky stuff, because there's actually a few different reasons why this is really important. First of all, for some additional California climatology lesson, the winter, the late fall and the early winter, I should say, are the time of year when that part of the state sees what are known as offshore winds, sometimes called the Santa Ana winds. Essentially what they are very strong, sometimes violently strong, as we saw last week with gusts to 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, hurricane
speeds,
yeah.
Plus even force winds in some cases that blow down slopes. So these are winds that actually blow down the mountain slopes and cascade downward into the valleys below. And in doing so, as they descend and as the ambient pressure increases, often they tend to warm and dry that air, like compressing air in a bicycle pump. And so these winds are not only very strong, but they're essentially like an atmospheric blow dryer. So not only do you have 70, 80, 90 plus mile an hour wind gusts, but you also have relative humidity that gets pretty close to zero in some cases. So there's almost no moisture in the atmospheric column whatsoever, all the way up to the top of the troposphere.
Okay, so that's significant as well. One of the things we've been hearing about are the winds. So from what he just said, this cycle, this weather pattern is pretty predictable and normal for California. So you have these winds coming over the mountains and coming down and drying everything. Okay, very strong winds. The humidity is going down. Low humidity equals low moisture. So if you're drying everything, that makes everything suitable for fires. Okay, so then the question is, why was this? If you know these cycles are happening, if you know about these patterns, these climate patterns, why has nothing been done up to this point? Why was this not prepared for? Michael says, from what I heard, is the people who lived there didn't want to pay extra taxes for funding to clear the underbrush. Yep. It all falls back on politics. So politics mixing with science. And I do hear that they have some pretty weird and unpractical laws and policies out in California in terms of land usage, in terms of building codes, and also now in the areas of climate and environmental policy. And it's all coming to head right now. So let's go back. I'll play a little bit longer and then I will wrap this up. This link is below in the description box in case you guys want to watch the whole thing yourself.
Term blow dry. If something had any moisture in it at all, if you blow hot, unmoist air across it.
This AI trade finder will handpick you options trades every morning on autopilot. Hi, my name.
Okay, we have a freeze here. Hold on.
It's going to dry out and become kindling.
So that's not so unusual to have these blow dryer winds at this time of year. But the key difference between how things would usually be this time of year versus how things were in early January when these fires broke out is that it was just ridiculously bone dry. And that is not typically the case in early January.
So the combination of the two was especially potent. Not to put words in your mouth, but you're saying the underbrush is what will carry the fire from one home to another, right? Plus the wind and the ash through the atmosphere.
Most of coastal Southern California is a semi-arid environment with actually quite dense and in some cases you could even call it lush vegetation, at least in a wet year. So there's an overabundance of plants and vegetation that for various ecological reasons is intrinsically flammable. A lot of the brush in Southern California is called chaparral, and it produces oils within the plant tissues that are particularly flammable, that make it burn. Some firefighters will say burn like gasoline when conditions are otherwise conducive.
Whoa. Do we know how these fires started?
What?
I was about to make another point there. Or maybe I was just stopping this just for the sake of stopping it. But the underbrush. The brush, that's significant. Again, if you don't clear that stuff out, if you don't have a policy for it, then you're gonna create the environment for this to happen. So the next question is, how did this start? Is this natural, or did someone strike a match, throw a cigarette butt, or did an arsonist intentionally start something like this? Now that's interesting what he just said about the chaparral also, in that the plants naturally create an oil. As I described, fire needs oxygen and it typically needs a carbon source as well. So the plants, anything living is carbon based, but if the plants are secreting and generating oils, then yeah, you just have this fuel source that's going to combust once it gets ignited. And you have the winds blowing, you have the humidity going down, and if you watch the footage, you could see little specks, little ignited specks just flying everywhere, everything is just gonna ignite. All right, we'll go a little bit further. Fair use.
What is clear is that in these sorts of fires, there really aren't any natural ignition sources. The primary natural ignition source for wildfire on Earth, of course, as you'd expect, is lightning. There are some other less common ones like volcanic eruptions, and if you get very unlucky with a rock slide and two rocks happen to create a spark, you might produce one that way. But generally speaking, in this part of the world, because we know there was no lightning, there will be some sort of human caused spark. So it could be a power line, it could be some carelessness from an errant cigarette butt, or a residual smoldering from fireworks is one hypothesis. So there's any number of potential sparks in a county with millions of people living in it. They're just the fact of modern life. But it will almost inevitably turn out to be the case that it was some sort of human activity that created that initial spark.
So it was probably something man-made that started it. Okay. I don't think anybody knows for sure right now. Anyone there in the chat, have any of you lived through a fire? I've been blessed that I've never experienced a fire. I've never experienced a loss of property or a loss of life due to a fire. I don't think my brother will mind me sharing this, but my brother, his place burned in upstate New York. His place burned down about 2 years ago, 2 to 3 years ago. And he had to, he didn't have a $1 million mansion like those in California, but you certainly, when you fathom all of your belongings and all of your goods and all of your clothing items, the hats, the sweaters, the suits that you love so much, all of the stuff that you can't repurchase, then you start to understand the significance of having your house, your home burned down and losing everything, and then having to rebuild and replace everything. So it's a very, very daunting thing. Have any of you ever experienced a fire and having to rebuild your life and replace all of your items? Okay, we'll watch a little bit more, and then I'm going to wrap this up probably in about 10 more minutes. Fair use.
NASA has a website that shares with the viewer images taken from space of Earth's surface, and they track wildfires anywhere they are on Earth when they are rotated into view for the camera. And I was just reviewing it last night, and the LA wildfires are one of several that are going on right now around the world. LA appears to be sort of more devastating than most, but the idea that the wildfire is something we're living with, is this the new normal?
The question of how we think about wildfire on a warming planet is a critical one. And the reality is that there has been wildfire, which is really just a way of saying vegetation burning, for as long as we've been on a planet that has had oxygen in its atmosphere and significant biomass that's available to burn. So in a certain sense, there have been vegetation fires on Earth for as long as there have been plants on Earth, which has been a while.
You can have a wildfire that burns more acres than what's going on now, but if it doesn't engulf homes, it's just a wildfire in the forest, and we try to put it out or let it burn ecologically, whatever. So it's the combination of such a widespread wildfire on top of residences that is especially devastating.
The classic way of thinking about disasters is that you have both a natural hazard, a fire, a flood, or drought, or whatever it is, You also have to have population exposed to it. So it's the classic if a tree falls in the forest type situation.
Yeah, so that exposure, especially when it involves people who are wealthy, it comes to the very front of the news.
So there are some elements here that are familiar from knowledge of what has happened before, but then there are also some pieces that are different. The scope of the losses, of course, are enormous and record-breaking, but also it is not typical to see this ongoing level of extreme fire risk in Southern California as we head into mid-January. That is something that we generally do not see. So it's a combination of familiar risk factors along with some things that are a lot less typical that we're seeing right now.
So
Money Motion, thank you for the generous Cash App. That's much appreciated. I appreciate that. Science Topics. Well, I've said that before. I won't say that again. But thank you for the generous Cash App. If anyone else wants to make a donation, my Cash App and PayPal are in the chat there, and they're in the description box. He says, I'm in AZ. Money Motion, I was just there. I was there last week. In Chandler. He says, I'm in AZ. Most of the fires have been up in the mountains, just smoke coming down to street level. Okay. Yeah, I think as he described, this happens. This is a part of nature. I think the big thing is that, millions of humans, thousands or millions, a significant number of humans have been affected and impacted by this. And the juxtaposition images are very, very powerful here when they show the neighborhoods and the landscape pre-fire and post-fire. It really, really shows how devastating this is, and it shows how many resources are going to be needed to build back better. Shout out to President Biden. Don't let the doorknob hit you where the good Lord split you. But the devastation for this is massive, and they were saying that they've been giving numbers for the body count in terms of the dead, but those numbers are just going to keep going up and up and up as this thing goes through to its completion. I don't think it's done yet. So I'll play one more segment because I'm running up on an hour, and there are some other things on the to-do list today. So then I'll wrap this up. So I'll play one more segment. This video is below in the description box in case you all want to watch it to the end yourself. But I'm sure you might be saturated right now in terms of the news covering this. Fair use.
In terms of fighting these fires, there's a lot of talk about water pressure within hydrants, and we see those magnificent images of helicopters dropping water. That all feels like just a drop in a bucket, a literal, figurative drop in a bucket. What power do these methods have over fires of such magnitude?
For folks who've never experienced a wind-driven wildfire up close and personal, I think it's difficult sometimes to get a sense of scale regarding the real enormity of the dynamics of this sort of event. I think there's a perception in many cases that a wildfire sort of progresses contiguously and linearly across the landscape, some wall of flames that moves from point A to point B. And what we see during these extreme wind-driven fires, like occurred in the LA basin recently, are that it's not generally this contiguous wall of flame, but it is this essentially a snowstorm of billions of hot embers raining down, blowing horizontally. And there's remarkable footage of this from folks on the ground as the disaster was unfolding. And so the challenge is that...
By the way, I'm imaging that in my head, billions of embers.
Billions upon billions.
And the faster the wind speed, the heavier is the ember that it can send airborne.
Imagine if you were in a blizzard, except that instead of snowflakes, all of them were embers. And instead of 40-mile-an-hour winds, it was, in some cases, 100 miles an hour. Okay. And that's what you're up against.
That's crazy. So,
all right, let me see what Neil has to say, and then I'm going to wrap this up.
Tell me about fire suppression with helicopters. How well does that work?
And we've actually seen some very good early stops and successes on other fires that didn't become disastrous in the same week. But the challenge is that you can't operate those aircraft when it's extremely windy. So under the very most dire fire weather conditions is when the suppression tactics we have available become the least effective.
That's bad.
Obviously, the reason why there was such a disaster in LA County last week is not just because of the recent weather conditions. It's not just because of climate change. It's not just because people live in the high risk zones. There's all of these factors are at play. And the reality is, in a lot of fire prone parts of the US, and this is not just true in LA, but throughout California and frankly, all around the country, we don't build individual structures or neighborhoods to be fire resilient. Certainly not as much as we could and probably should be doing. So there is a lot you can do.
And if you did, and the insurance company reflected that in your rates versus other people's rates, that would be quite a force operating on people's rebuilding plans.
All right. I think that's probably a good place to stop. But I think that discussion, we got about halfway through there, that gives you a feel for the scope of this whole thing and how all these different parts come together and how all the different factors came together to cause this thing. So he ended there on insurance. They ended there. Well, we ended on insurance, and we ended on you have to plan. If you're going to build communities in habitats like that, you need to think about how to build homes in the most efficient way. I think they were getting to maybe not building the homes so close together, because if you think about it, when one home ignites, flames can go over to the next home, and then flames can go over to the next home if they're too close together. So, but as I was watching the coverage for this entire thing last week and this week, Governor Gavin Newsom, he's under fire for this. President Trump came out and said we tried to proactively address this years ago. They didn't want the help. They didn't like our plan. Mayor Karen Bass, she went over to Africa prior to this whole thing ramping up and taking off. And so I think what this goes back to is leadership, planning, and I think that the citizenship, the electorate needs to be well educated on these things, and you need to vote on these things. I'm hoping that the citizens of California, the ones that are left, because a lot of folks have left for conservative states due to policies and also high taxes and all kinds of other bogus conditions. But I think that I'm hoping that the people who are left and the people who repopulate the state, I'm hoping that they take a look at this and they vote accordingly. Maybe it is time for Gavin Newsom to go. Maybe it is time for Karen Bass to go. Maybe the most important thing isn't DEI or those kinds of things. Maybe the most important thing is sound decision making. Okay, if you knew this thing had there was a high probability for something like this to happen, if you knew this, why did they not prepare for this adequately? Okay. And I think I'll stop this there. Money Motion says, yep, wind speeds wreak havoc on helicopters. Only fixed wings are feasible, but reloading water tanks and getting sorties up are much slower. Yeah, I mean, you need optimal conditions for any aircraft to fly, especially a helicopter, which is not, an airplane is jettisoning from point A to point B in a straight line very quickly. A helicopter is designed to kind of float and hover. And if the wind speeds are really, really blowing, that helicopter is going to get blown out of the air. So it's good to have the technology, but Mother Nature ultimately wins out in many instances. All right, Money in Motion, thank you for the Cash App. I'm going to let's see, just take a quick look. Okay, everybody, I am going to wrap up. I just wanted to say a few words about this. This has been in the news. It's in the cycle right now. Eventually, Washington, D.C. is going to turn orange again on Monday. So there are going to be a whole slew of things that are going to come down the news cycle that will probably replace this, though they are going to be rebuilding from this for a while. Okay, so, but I wanted to give some commentary and coverage on it. For whatever it is, wherever you live, you want sound political leadership, and I think the citizenry and the electorate needs to be as well educated as possible. This is why even your common person needs to understand science, because your elected officials, they're proposing things, they're creating budgets, they're allocating money for things, they are setting aside money for building projects, they're neglecting other projects, they're promoting certain initiatives, but the voter base needs to take a look at what's going on, take a look at what they're implementing, and say, okay, well, what's the long term? What are the long term ramifications for you doing this? Does this matter? Should we care? Should we have our reservoirs filled? Should we have money creating water stores for us? Or is it cool to pay for this pet project that you think is cool because it sounds good right now? Okay, your voter base needs to be elected, and that's why your school systems and your educational systems, that's another reason why those are so critical, because you don't want to create a citizenry full of idiots and people who don't know anything. Then you'll elect who knows what. Okay. All right, everyone, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you for watching. Thank you for those of you who watched. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. If you want to make a donation, that information is below in the description box. The link to my book and my newsletter, those are in the description box as well. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your Saturday. There are some other topics that are pending, which I will discuss in the weeks and months to come. As always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Always try to do your best. Take care, and I will talk to you the next time. Bye-bye.